Hello, friends. On July 20, 1969, a momentous event took place. The lunar module of the Apollo 11 mission successfully landed on the Moon, carrying astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Neil Armstrong, eager to set foot on the lunar surface, encountered some difficulties while opening the module's door due to the high pressure. However, after a brief struggle, he managed to open it and made his way down to the Moon's surface in his heavy spacesuit. In the process, he accidentally broke off a crucial piece of the lunar module, the ascent engine arming switch. Unaware of this, Armstrong became the first man to step on the Moon, famously saying, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." However, even more than 50 years later, there are still people who refuse to believe that humans actually landed on the Moon. These individuals concoct their own theories, claiming that the entire Apollo 11 mission was a staged event orchestrated by the United States. They argue that the Moon landing scenes were filmed on Earth, and that the world was deceived. They raise questions like, how did the flag flutter without air? And demand to know the truth behind these claims. Today, let's delve into this story and try to understand the truth behind the Apollo 11 mission in this video. But before we explore the Moon landing conspiracy theories, let's take a step back and understand the context in which the Apollo 11 mission was planned. The primary reason behind this ambitious undertaking was the Cold War, a protracted conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both nations were engaged in a space race, striving to outdo each other in space exploration. In 1957, the Soviet Union shocked the world by successfully launching the first artificial satellite, Sputnik, into Earth's orbit. The American government was alarmed by the Soviets' technological advancements. To respond, the United States launched its own satellite in 1958, attempting to catch up. However, in 1961, the Soviets once again outpaced the Americans by sending Yuri Gagarin as the first person into space. This event propelled the United States into action. Soon after Gagarin's flight, President John F. Kennedy wrote a letter to his vice president, dated April 20, 1961, seeking ways to surpass the Soviet Union. He explored the possibility of either establishing a laboratory in space or embarking on a trip around the Moon. Kennedy questioned whether they were making the maximum effort and if there were other space programs that could be quickly achieved to gain a lead in the race. In a historic speech on May 25, 1961, President Kennedy promised the world that the United States would send humans to the Moon and bring them back safely before the end of the decade. This audacious announcement was met with disbelief by many, considering the technological limitations of that era. Nevertheless, Kennedy allocated substantial funding, approximately $7 to $9 billion, to NASA over the next 5 years, with the sole focus of achieving this extraordinary goal. The subsequent years were filled with extensive testing and unmanned missions to ensure the success of the Apollo program. Tragedy struck during the Apollo 1 mission in 1967 when a fire broke out during a test on Earth, claiming the lives of 3 astronauts. Despite this setback, NASA persevered and continued with further testing, leading to successful unmanned missions such as Apollo 4, Apollo 5, and Apollo 6. In October 1968, Apollo 7 became the first manned mission of the Apollo program, followed by Apollo 8 in December of the same year, which sent 3 astronauts near the Moon. In March 1969, Apollo 9 tested the lunar module, the part of the spacecraft designed to land on the Moon. 2 months later, Apollo 10 simulated nearly every aspect of the upcoming Apollo 11 mission, except for the actual Moon landing. Finally, on July 16, 1969, the Apollo 11 mission was launched. Commander Neil Armstrong, pilot Michael Collins, and pilot Buzz Aldrin embarked on this historic journey. The spacecraft consisted of 3 main parts: the command module, Columbia, the service module, and the lunar module, Eagle. The plan was for the lunar module to detach and land on the Moon, while the command module and service module remained in lunar orbit. Using a Saturn V5 rocket, the spacecraft reached Earth's orbit within 10 minutes of launch. After approximately 1.5 revolutions around the Earth, they received permission to begin trans-lunar injection, which involved leaving Earth's orbit and heading towards the Moon. The journey to the Moon took several days, during which the astronauts ate, slept, and documented their experiences. On July 19, 1969, the Apollo 11 spacecraft entered the Moon's orbit after traveling nearly 400,000 kilometers. The command module and lunar module separated, with Michael Collins remaining in the command module while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin descended to the lunar surface in the lunar module. Armstrong took control of the landing when he noticed an unfavorable landing spot, successfully maneuvering to a safer location. At 8:16 p.m., Buzz Aldrin checked the fuel indicator and discovered that only 5% of the fuel remained. With a critical fuel state, the mission control initiated a countdown to determine whether to proceed with the landing or abort the mission. Ultimately, with just 30 seconds remaining in the countdown, Neil Armstrong radioed to Earth, "Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." Neil Armstrong then became the first person to set foot on the Moon, followed by Buzz Aldrin. Over the course of approximately 2.5 hours, they conducted various experiments, collected samples, and set up scientific instruments. Although the Moon landing was driven by the Cold War, it also aimed to accomplish scientific objectives, including measuring solar winds, using lasers to calculate Earth-Moon distance, and studying moonquakes. Upon their return to the lunar module, Armstrong and Aldrin discovered the broken ascent engine arming switch. This critical piece was necessary for the lunar module to take off and rendezvous with the command module. They improvised a solution using a ballpoint pen, successfully completing the circuit and reigniting the engine. Rejoining the command module, the three astronauts set their course for Earth. During re-entry, they encountered issues with the thrusters on the service module, which were meant to push it away from the command module to prevent collision during descent. However, the thrusters failed, and the astronauts witnessed the destruction of the service module's debris around them. Fortunately, the command module remained unharmed, and the parachutes deployed, enabling a safe splashdown in the ocean. Following their return, the astronauts underwent a 14-day quarantine to mitigate the potential risk of lunar pathogens. This precautionary measure was taken to ensure their safety and the safety of Earth's inhabitants. Thankfully, no adverse effects were observed. Now, let's address the conspiracy theories that suggest the Moon landing was faked. Despite their persistence, these theories have been debunked multiple times. The Soviet Union, America's Cold War rival, acknowledged the Moon landing in its Great Soviet Encyclopedia, and Soviet articles described it as the third historic event of the space age. If the Moon landing were truly a fabrication, the Soviets would not have acknowledged it. Other claims, such as the flag fluttering without air or the absence of stars in photos, can be explained by the specific conditions on the Moon and the limitations of the equipment used. The flag's movement was due to its design, with a horizontal rod added to keep it extended. As for the absence of stars in photos, the sunlight reflecting off the lunar surface and the astronauts' reflective spacesuits overwhelmed the cameras, making it difficult to capture the faint stars. It's important to note that there were valid criticisms of the Apollo program at the time. People questioned the massive amount of money being spent on space exploration while pressing issues like education, inequality, and the Vietnam War needed attention. However, the technological advancements and scientific discoveries resulting from the Apollo missions have had lasting impacts, including the development of microchips and other space-related technologies. Since the last Moon landing in 1972, there have been no further human missions to the Moon. However, NASA's Artemis program aims to send humans back to the Moon, with plans to land the first woman and person of color on the lunar surface by 2025-2026. In conclusion, the Moon landing conspiracy theories have been widely debunked, and the Apollo 11 mission stands as a significant achievement in human history. It was a result of intense competition during the Cold War, driven by scientific and technological advancements. While there were valid criticisms of the mission's cost, its impact on advancing human knowledge and inspiring future generations cannot be denied. Thank you for watching.